Well, everyone, happy holidays. Welcome back to Dprieto TV. We are, like I said, we're finally in the holiday season, the best time of the year. It's December. We got a little bit left to go, and we also got a little bit left to go in Prietology Season 4. We are on Episode 5 today, the Wacky World of Weather. We're talking about climate, weather, the water cycle, fronts, seasons, precipitation, wind. We're talking about a good bunch of stuff today. We have some announcements at the end. Unfortunately, we don't have an experiment of the day today, or a demo, so yeah. We won't have one for the rest of the season because the next episode, which I'll reveal at the end of the video, it's kind of hard to do an experiment of, so yeah, these next two episodes because we can't really experiment with weather. And also, this is the penultimate episode of Season 4, the second to last episode. The next episode, coming at the beginning of next year, is the final episode of Season 4 of Prietology before we move into Season 5. Well, let's waste no more time. Let's go over the key terms. Well, here in our penultimate episode of the Wacky World of Weather, we got 10 terms today. We're at the max amount of terms now, like I said at the beginning of the season. 10 terms today. We got a good amount of stuff to talk about today. We got the atmosphere, weather, climate, front, seasons, water cycle, precipitation, wind, clouds, and the greenhouse effect. Well, let's get started on our first term. Alright, here we are in our first term. Before we start talking about weather or climate or anything besides that, we got to go over atmosphere, one of our most important factors of anything today. It separates the Earth from space, so essentially it's like the border between Earth, here and land, the sky and the seas, and space where there's no sky, seas, and people, and you could die or freeze to death. So this is essentially keeping us from dying. 5 layers, I'll list them over here. The troposphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and the exosphere. There you go, the 5 layers. It blocks the sun's radiation, it blocks the heat, it keeps the earth warm. It had the ozone layer over here. It blocks the earth's radiation from getting in, and it's in the stratosphere. The ozone is in the stratosphere, which is the second to lowest layer, just above the troposphere. And the ozone essentially blocks the radiation, all this stuff that we don't want coming here on Earth. Fun fact, the Kármán line marks the boundary for the atmosphere. So from here up all the way to the sky, 62 miles. That is a lot of miles. 62 miles from here all the way to space. It's a lot of, yeah. Geez, 62 miles. That would take a while to get there for a rocket ship even. Alright, let's get to our next term. Essentially what we're basing this entire episode off of. Weather. It is the source of precipitation, wind, natural disaster, climate, fronts, well actually not climate, winds, clouds. It's a source of all the geological stuff here on Earth. That's why we're focusing so much of it into this episode. Is a source of precipitation, like I said. It's also can be a main force of erosion, so wind erosion, water erosion. We talked about that last episode when we talked about the waterworks. It occurs mostly in the lower atmosphere, in the troposphere, which is the lowest one. Yeah, the weather occurs in the troposphere, which is the lowest layer of the atmosphere. That tells you how big the atmosphere is compared to that. That if it's 62 miles and the troposphere is way up in the sky, you got a lot of atmosphere. And it's usually influenced by pressure changes. That is the driving force of weather. Changes in pressure, which we will talk about in a bit. Fun fact, the hottest temperature ever recorded by weather, and usually weather contributes to temperature, the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth, 136 degrees Fahrenheit. That is burning hot. Even here in Phoenix, we get to like 100. Usually in the summers, like 110 here in Phoenix. 136, I can't imagine that. That's like deadly choking. By the way, this is recorded in Libya, which is in North Africa. Alright, here we have in our next term. These next two terms, weather and climate, they're very similar to each other, but climate is really kind of like the governing body of weather. It's a measure of the average weather in an area. So we're kind of going back to our geography a bit when we talk about climate. Climate's the average weather in an area. So like if one has more precipitation than the other, if one's more dry, if one's more wet, it's more predictable than weather. So weather is usually the result of what you have. Climate is the expected, weather is the result. So climate is like, oh, the climate is very rainy here, and weather's like, okay, it actually rained. That's the expected result. Climate's like the conditions that it's in. It is dependent on latitude, terrain type, height above sea level, etc. It's a bunch of other stuff. But really, like, latitude is what's really, so if, like, you're higher up the Earth or lower down the Earth, so, like, if you're in the middle near the equator, you're going to have more rainy, more dry, but if you're high up in the Earth, like the North Pole, it's going to be much colder. Height above sea level, I'm guessing that's about pressure, so, like I said, weather's influenced by pressure. With being at higher sea level, there's less pressure, less vapor pressure for that. Climate exists in zones, called climate zones, and the tropics. And there are 5 types of climate zones. There's 6 actually, now that I look at my notes. There are 6 types of climate zones: tropical, monsoon, dry, warm, cool, and cold. And essentially those are all over the Earth. So like tropical ones are more near the equator and near the tropics, and the more cooler, drier ones are near the poles, hot and dry like in the deserts near the upper top of the equator, up the higher tropic near the North Pole. Yeah, alright. Fun fact, the hottest 30 years on record, which is kind of like a predictable weather, 1970 to 2000, and probably when we get to 2030, sheesh, I think it'll probably be more considering with all this climate change stuff going on. Alright, let's get to the next term. Here's also another interesting one to do with weather. Some of these are going to do with weather, probably because we're talking about weather. Front, what an interesting term we have here. It's the indication of arriving weather. So if it starts getting cold somewhere, you could tell like, oh, there's weather arriving. If it is windy on a day, new type of weather is going to start arriving. It's the division of air in the atmosphere based on density and temperature. So the hotter, like they say, hot air rises, the hotter air is going to be more towards the top of the atmosphere, the colder air to the bottom. If those 2 types of air collide, then you get nasty weather. Like tornadoes. Tornadoes are made from warm, moist air colliding with cold, dry air. You get those together, usually occurs in the Midwest, you can get a tornado. There are 2 types. There are warm fronts and cold fronts. Let's put a picture right here. Right there. There we see a picture of a front chart, so like the weather in a coming area. The lines with the blue triangles, that indicates a cold front, and the line with the red like semicircles is the one that indicates warm front. And usually you see those in like news broadcasts and like weather shows and stuff like that. The changing between the type of air types makes weather, and like I said, the collision between these 2 types of air types can indicate like bad weather is incoming. Warm air can be led by cold air and vice versa. So like if more cold air is going into an area, you know the weather's going to become much colder. The front is essentially like an indication, essentially like, hey, this is what's coming. That's a front. Fun fact, it was discovered by, I'm probably going to butcher this name, V and J Berknes. I'm going to guess it's Dutch or German? I don't know. Oh well. Here's a term with some meaning. It's seasons. Seasons, essentially, you've seen them everywhere. You know the seasons. You experience them every year. Right now in the Northern Hemisphere in the winter. They follow each other in a cycle, not like the tropics. The tropics are not a cycle. Those are based on climate, like we saw. They follow each other in a cycle. You got your spring, you got your summer, you got your autumn or fall, and the winter. Right now we're in the Northern Hemisphere. We are in the winter. We'll talk about hemisphere and how they influence a bit. It is caused by the tilted axis of the Earth, which we saw. I think I did a demo in the 2nd episode of the season when we talked about longitude and latitude. Yeah, we saw that like the tilted axis can like different variance in temperature, and it's caused by the tilted axis of the Earth. Like I said, it's 23.5 degrees if you did not know that. The Earth is tilted. Half of the year the North Hemisphere will be facing towards the sun, more tilted towards the sun, and the other half of the year the Southern Hemisphere is tilted away from the sun, and that is what causes the seasons. Right now, us in the Northern Hemisphere, we are in the winter. It is a bit cold outside. Not too cold outside because we live in Arizona. It's a desert. But people down right now in the Southern Hemisphere, below the equator, right now are in summer. Like places like Brazil or Australia or South Africa. Those places are in the middle of their summer right now. So yeah, that tilted Earth axis is the one that causes the difference in seasons. So next season, when it's spring, they'll be in fall. Essentially, that kind of like they're 2 seasons behind, or we're 2 seasons ahead. At the equator, there are many rainy and dry seasons instead. So mostly like in that area, like I said, between the tropics, there are rainy and dry seasons instead of like the normal like fall, winter, spring, summer thing. Fun fact, the Antarctic and the Arctic, they have 24 hours of sunshine in the summer. That is a lot because literally where they are, during the summertime, Yeah, during the summertime, so let's say we're in the North Pole and we're in the summertime. We think about it, the North Pole is directly above. It doesn't face away from the sun or go away. It's exactly in the middle. So you're just spinning like this. The Earth would just be spinning like this forever. So you just face the sun the entire time. So yeah, like people who live in like places like Alaska, they experience that stuff because they're pretty high up above the tropics and near the poles. Alright, the water cycle. I'm pretty sure you've heard this before in school, but let's see what we can learn about it. The water cycle is essentially, it's fueled by sunshine. It is the creator of all types of precipitation. It is fueled by sunshine. There's 3 phases, but the sunshine is really the main cause of it. It evaporates the water, which is the first phase, called evaporation. Evaporates the water and it vaporizes, condensing into water vapor. Condensation is when the water vapor cools and condenses into clouds, and those are the things that you see in the sky almost every day. And the last one, precipitation, which we'll talk about in a bit. That's a special phase. Precipitation is when those water clouds have too much water in them, and it's released into the sky and down into land and creates precipitation like hail, snow, sleet, and rain. And yeah, this is really a lot. And like I said, fueled by sunshine, all that thermal energy from the sun coming into the water, vaporizing it, exciting the molecules, and then look, vaporizes into the sky. Fun fact, the year's water molecule in the ocean right now, 3,200 times like a usual molecule will go through a water cycle in a year. 3,200 times. That is a lot for even just a little individual molecule. And think about the billions and billions of billions and billions of molecules that we have out in the oceans all over the world. Alright, we talked about this when we talked about the water cycle for a bit. Well, the most important phase, I would say, precipitation, moisture falling from the sky. Saying it like that makes it sound like some sort of fantasy thing. But yeah, literally, moisture falling from the sky can be in the form, usually there's 4 main forms. Rain, which we see everywhere. Snow, not everywhere. Hail, really only in extreme cases. And sleet, which is also in really extreme cases. Rain, your liquid form of water. Snow, your solid form of water coming down in little fragments, snowflakes. Hail, which is like bigger, like more like stuff you would see in tornadoes and intense lightning storm, blocks of ice falling onto the ground. And sleet, which is like a mushy like sludge of water and snow combined in the same time. It's rain and snow combined at the same time and coming down. That's like, it's like also another one of those like really extreme cases as well. The vital part of weather. It is incredibly vital to weather. Without precipitation, there probably wouldn't be weather because there's no water cycle. And the last phase of the water cycle. So precipitation is incredibly crucial for that, and water in general. Humidity is when humidity is when the clouds or the water vapor stays at that water vapor state and descends onto the earth, creating like you would see fog and stuff like that when that water vapor comes into the earth and then creates more of like a sticky texture, usually found more in like the oceans where more vaporization is present. Fun fact, the total precipitation globally in 1 calendar year, 5.52 thousand trillion tons of water a year. 5.52 thousand trillion tons of water a year falling from the sky from the water cycle. That is an immense amount. Alright, we're in the second half. We have 3 more terms to go, and they're some really good ones. This is going to sound weird, but I think this term has the win. It's wind. The movement of gas influenced by the atmosphere. A super crucial thing also for our weather in this planet. Wind is in really almost every planet in the solar system. Incredibly crucial. The movement of gas in the atmosphere driven by a difference in pressure. Without that difference in pressure, you don't have wind. High pressure versus low pressure. High pressure systems go up. When the wind blows frequently in a certain direction, it's called prevailing wind. We're going to have some more technical terms in this. Prevailing wind, so when like wind is usually like, let's say, pointing east for a long time, that's your eastern prevailing wind. And remember, wind is caused by that difference in pressure. When, like I said, wind always blows from a high pressure to a low pressure area caused by the atmosphere, like differing pressure, because the atmosphere, it tries to reach something called equilibrium all the time, that are perfectly balanced pressure every single time, trying to get it, like trying to go like not too high or not too low. It's never going to get there, but like with that altering of high and low pressure, it's going to be moving that gas, the wind, sweeping through the earth. The closer the differences in pressure are, so like if you're in an area with a lot of close difference between high and low pressure, the faster the wind will be. So if there's like not a giant difference in pressure, then there's going to be faster wind. If it's a big difference in pressure, not that much. Gales are called high force winds, so like the ones with really close temperature, really close pressure, those are gales. They can be up to 39 to 46 miles an hour, which is incredibly fast. Well, not for me, I don't know what incredibly fast is. Max wind here usually gets like 20 miles an hour, 25, not when it comes to like monsoons and stuff. But yeah, but sometimes it can get pretty windy here, and gales are those high force winds. Fun fact, the fastest ever recorded wind in the history of what we know, 318 miles an hour. That is faster than a Formula 1 race car. Wow, 319 miles an hour, caused by a tornado in Oklahoma in 1999, if you did not know that. But yeah, those tornadoes are usually the source of the super fast winds that we see really in Earth. Like usually the fastest winds are recorded not outside the tornado, but inside the tornado, but it's pretty hard to get there. Alright, 2 more terms to go. This term right here is not usually really loud, but it's interesting because it's cloud. Water vapor literally in the sky, literally right above us. Literally, as you can see, like the water I have here was one point in the sky, or suspended in the sky at one point, considering that we have the water cycle going on all the time. It is pushed around by wind, like we said, those differences in air pressure. Light reflected off of it. So like if you look at a cloud, you think, oh, nice fluffy white. You're wrong. Light reflected off of it makes it look nice and fluffy white, but it's actually really like dark gray and wet. So like when usually like you see a rainstorm come around, you can see like that dark gray wet, that dark gray clouds hovering over. That is the actual color of it, instead of like the white, because that's reflected light from the sun makes it look white, but it's actually kind of like wet and dark gray. We got 5 types. I'm going to move over here for this one because I'm going to listen out. The first one, cirrus. I think that's how I say it. Cirrus. It's usually those icier clouds. It's more like wispy ones. There's like really thin outstretched ones. Cumulus? Yeah, cumulus clouds. Those are the fluffy white ones you usually see everywhere. Cumulonimbus, those fluffy ones, but more darker and grayer. Nimbostratus, the thick ones, the super really thick ones. The ones, but they're also like dark color, like dark gray color, and more lower. So usually those ones, usually like the mountains, the ones that are like around rain. And the last one, stratus. Those are the thin, flat, and low ones. Those are usually the ones that we see up high. The cirrus ones are really high up because, like I said, they're icy and wispy. They're really like long and stretched out, and they can be pretty cold sometimes. And all of these clouds, everywhere, they form in the lowest level of the atmosphere, which we learned a bit ago was the troposphere, the lowest level of the atmosphere. Fun fact, the highest cloud is called the polar mesophoric. It's not like, but those are the 5 main types I said, but there's another one. It's called the polar mesophoric. It forms at 53 meters. It can be up to 53 meters, essentially. Remember that thing I called the fun fact I told you about with the atmosphere, the Kármán line? The Kármán line is at 62. This is at 53. That's only 9. Yeah, it's only 9 miles off that Kármán line. So those polar mesophoric ones, pretty cold and wispy, because you get all the way up 53 miles up the sky. That's no easy feat. All right, 1 more term to go, and it's an interesting one. All right, 1 more term to go, and this one's an interesting one. Really kind of combines what we learned both in the last episode and this one into one term. We kind of touched on it in the last episode. The greenhouse effect. Ooh, the greenhouse effect, how it is being talked about so much in today's world. Stops the sun's energy from escaping into space. Essentially, remember, like, you know what an actual greenhouse is. The thing that they put, let me put a picture. This is an actual greenhouse. This is what they put plants in. Like a glass shed that traps all the heat to keep the plants warm and to give them more energy. That's essentially the same thing that's happening in the atmosphere with the greenhouse effect. All the sun's energy is being trapped into the atmosphere, not escaping into space, keeping us all nice, comfy, and warm. Carbon dioxide is the main contributor to the greenhouse effect, because carbon dioxide has a good ability to trap heat, and that's usually occurring in the higher atmosphere, contributing more heat and not letting heat escape into space, giving the planet more warmth. Usually right now, like in today's days, in today's world, it has a really negative connotation, the greenhouse effect, because it contributes to something called global warming, which is something we have seen and experienced all the time in the news, talking about like, oh, the greenhouse effect is bad. It's not really. It's a natural process of the Earth. Every planet has greenhouse effect, I think, or maybe just the Earth, maybe. Yeah. The greenhouse effect is a natural process, but is usually contributed with global warming, usually from the burning of fossil fuels, so like methane, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, water vapor, monoxide, sulfur dioxide. That all contributes. Those are all greenhouse gases, and those are the ones that go up into the sky and contribute to global warming because those can trap in heat very easily. The more CO2 in the atmosphere, the more heat it traps, contributing to more different climate patterns. That's why people are so worried about global warming, and that's why we should need to try to solve this global warming issue. More heat is being trapped in the atmosphere, contributing to more different climate changes that can devastate other people around the world, causing bad patterns of weather to occur. Fun fact: by the year 2100, the global temperature could rise from 2.5 degrees. I think it's around 0.8 right now. From 2.5 degrees to 10.4 degrees if we don't stop this right now. If we don't stop trying to pollute the skies with fossil fuels, it can rise up to 10.4 degrees by the year 2100. That is 88 years from now, which is still a lot. But yeah, hopefully in the future we can solve this. Alright, that's all the terms. Sadly, we don't have an experiment of the day today, but let's get right to announcements. We got some good ones. Oh, macro, almost knocked down the Statue of Liberty there. Well, interesting episode today. Announcements. Next episode of Season 4 is the final episode of Season 4 of Prietology. Season 4, Episode 6, coming to you at the beginning of next year. I'll announce the date probably in the next video of that, and maybe we'll see, or put in a community post. If you haven't seen, I've been posting community posts. I've been posting, I think the last post was post your new ideas. If you want new ideas, we'll probably post those once every 3 months, or maybe when I need ideas for next year. Yeah, so Season 4 finale next year at the beginning of the year, probably in January. Get excited for that. Next week, opposed to every 2 weeks, is a new video. We're going to be playing an idle game, Overlord's New Mansion, coming to you on December 18th. The last video before the Dprieto Christmas special for this year, the 2022 Dprieto Christmas special. Get excited for that. But first, Overlord's New Mansion coming to you on December 18th, the same day as the World Cup finale. So yeah, get excited for both of those. I'm excited for Morocco, hopefully, to do well. Next episode coming to you at the beginning of next year in 2023 is the theme, or the topic is, to close out the year, biomes. We are closing out 2020. We're closing out Season 4, Episode 5. Season 4 about geology, talking about biomes. So the rainforest, the temperate lands, what even is a biome, the food web, deserts, abyss, open ocean, tundra, taiga, what even all this stuff. Even we'll talk about conservation to end the season. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. Hope this video was interesting. I will see you next week, remember, for Overlord's New Mansion, that game we'll try to play. So yeah, get excited for that, and I will see you next week. See ya, and remote.